Nathan Miller kneeled on the worn floorboards of his grandfather's barn, sweat dampening his t-shirt as he hammered the final nail into the repaired corner post. The midday sun streamed through gaps in the weathered siding, illuminating dust motes that danced in golden shafts of light. At 35, the lines around his eyes had deepened, not just from squinting in the sun during long days of outdoor work, but from 3 years of raising his daughter alone after cancer took his wife. A chunk of wood fell from his hand, landing with a thud on the floor. But something about the sound made Nathan pause. It wasn't the solid thunk he expected, but a hollow, echoing sound that seemed out of place. The barn's foundation was packed earth. There shouldn't be anything hollow beneath these boards. Nathan tapped his hammer lightly against different sections of the floor. Solid, solid then, that hollow echo again. His grandfather Samuel had built everything on this property with his own hands over 40 years ago. Every fence post, every beam, every plank. Nathan knew every inch of this place, or thought he did. He ran his calloused palm over the suspicious boards, noticing for the first time how one section seemed slightly different from the rest, the nails newer, the wood a shade lighter. His curiosity piqued. Nathan wedged his crowbar under the edge of the first board and pulled. It gave way with surprising ease, and if it had been designed to be removed. One board, then another, then a third. Nathan's breath caught in his throat as a rectangular opening appeared below, descending into darkness. Wooden steps led downward, their edges worn smooth as if by frequent use. But that couldn't be right. His grandfather had died 15 years ago, and Nathan had lived alone with his daughter on this property ever since. He reached into his pocket for his phone, switching on the flashlight feature. The beam illuminated wooden support beams and carefully carved walls of earth. This wasn't some hastily dug hiding place. This was professional construction, the work of someone who knew what they were doing. Nathan's mind reeled. In all the years he'd lived here, all the times he'd walked across this floor, he'd never known this tunnel existed. But what made his heart race was what the light revealed in the packed dirt below. Footprints. Recent footprints. Someone had been down here within the last few days. Nathan lived miles from his nearest neighbor, and he was the only one with access to this barn. Or so he'd thought. The sound of a car engine in the distance pulled Nathan back to reality. Emma's school bus. His 12-year-old daughter would be home any minute, expecting her after-school snack and help with homework. The tunnel would have to wait. Nathan quickly replaced the boards, his mind swimming with questions. Who had built this? What was it for? And most disturbingly, who had been using it recently? "Dad, I'm home," Emma's voice called from the farmhouse. Nathan pushed himself to his feet, brushing dust from his jeans. His daughter's needs came first, they always had. The mystery beneath the floorboards would have to wait until after bedtime. "Coming, sweetheart," he called back, taking one last look at the now concealed entrance before leaving the barn. The familiar weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders as he crossed the yard, pushing aside the unsettling discovery to focus on being the father Emma needed. Emma sat at the kitchen table, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, freckles scattered across her nose like her mother's. She was spreading peanut butter on apple slices, a habit she'd picked up from watching her mom do the same years ago. The sight made Nathan's chest tighten with familiar grief. "How was school?" he asked, washing his hands at the sink. "We got our history assignments today. We have to do a family heritage project." Emma's eyes lit up. "Can I look through Grandpa Samuel's old stuff in the attic? Mrs. Hernandez says primary sources are best." Nathan hesitated, the hidden tunnel flashing in his mind. "Sure, but I'll need to go through some of it first. Some of those boxes haven't been opened since before you were born." After dinner and homework, after the nightly routine of teeth brushing and bedtime stories that Emma pretended she was too old for but still secretly enjoyed, Nathan sat on the edge of her bed. The farmhouse creaked and settled around them, sounds that had once spooked Emma but now formed the comfortable soundtrack of their lives. "Dad," Emma's voice was already heavy with approaching sleep. "Do you think Mom would be proud of my project?" Nathan's throat tightened. "She'd be incredibly proud of everything you do." "I miss her." "Me too, kiddo. Every day." He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, a gesture unchanged since she was a toddler. "Get some sleep now." Once Emma's breathing deepened into sleep, Nathan grabbed a more powerful flashlight from the kitchen drawer and made his way back to the barn. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamond dust. The barn door creaked as he pushed it open, and Nathan found himself moving quietly as if someone might hear him in his own barn. The floorboards came up easier this time. Nathan aimed his flashlight down into the darkness and began to descend the wooden steps. They creaked beneath his weight, but held firm. They'd been built to last just like everything else his grandfather had constructed. At the bottom of the stairs, the tunnel opened into a small room carved from the earth, supported by wooden beams. Nathan's flashlight beam revealed what he hadn't been able to see earlier. This wasn't just a tunnel, it was a living space. A leather chair faced away from him, positioned as if someone had been sitting there recently. Beside it stood a wooden table holding a tin cup still damp with water droplets, and a plate with crumbs that hadn't yet gathered dust. Nathan's hands trembled slightly as he examined the belongings scattered throughout the underground room. A wool blanket folded neatly on a makeshift bed, books stacked against one wall, personal items that spoke of someone living down here, not just hiding. This wasn't a temporary shelter, this was a home. He picked up one of the books and opened it to the first page. Written in careful handwriting were the words, "Property of Samuel Miller, 1851. His grandfather's name, his grandfather's handwriting, but the date couldn't be right. That would make this book over 170 years old. A metal box sat beneath the table, secured with a simple latch. Nathan opened it and found documents that made his breath catch in his throat. Deeds to properties he'd never heard of. Letters addressed to his grandfather from people whose names meant nothing to Nathan. And at the bottom, a photograph of three men standing in front of the very barn above his head, though it looked different somehow, newer with structures that no longer existed. One of the men in the photograph was definitely his grandfather, but he looked younger than Nathan had ever seen him. The other two men were strangers, yet something about their faces seemed familiar in a way that made Nathan's stomach twist with unease. He turned the photograph over and found writing in his grandfather's hand, "The agreement holds. The land stays divided. No one speaks of what happened here. SM 1852. Nathan stared at the words, his mind racing. What agreement? What had happened on this land that required such secrecy? And why had his grandfather built this elaborate hiding place to keep these documents concealed? As he examined the items on the table, Nathan noticed something else that chilled him to the bone. Fresh candle wax drippings, recent ash in a small metal dish. Someone had been burning candles down here, cooking food, living as if this underground room was their rightful home. A sudden noise from deeper in the tunnel made Nathan freeze. A scraping sound like something or someone moving in the darkness beyond this room. His flashlight beam trembled as he directed it toward the source of the sound, revealing another passage extending further than his light could reach. Nathan backed toward the stairs, heart pounding. Someone else knew about this place, someone who had been here recently. He needed to understand what he was dealing with before venturing deeper. Clutching the metal box of documents, he climbed the stairs and replaced the floorboards, his movements careful and quiet. Back in the safety of the farmhouse with Emma sleeping soundly upstairs, Nathan spread the contents of the metal box across the kitchen table. The documents were yellowed with age, the ink faded but still legible. Most were written in his grandfather's distinctive handwriting, but some bore other signatures, Thomas Harrison and William Cross. One document in particular caught his attention, a contract dated 1852, outlining an agreement between the three men regarding shared ownership of the land Nathan had always believed belonged solely to his family. According to this paper, the Miller property was actually divided into thirds with the Harrison and Cross families, each owning a portion, though the land was to be maintained as a single property under the Miller name. But why? What were they hiding? And more importantly, who had been using the tunnel recently? Nathan didn't sleep that night, his mind filled with questions as he pored over the documents, until dawn light filtered through the kitchen windows. When Emma appeared in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, he hastily gathered the papers and returned them to the metal box. "Dad, did you stay up all night?" Emma asked, pouring herself a bowl of cereal. "Just caught up in some paperwork." Nathan forced a smile. "How'd you sleep?" Emma frowned, stirring her cereal without eating. "I had weird dreams about people under the ground watching us." Nathan nearly dropped his coffee mug. "What kind of people?" "I don't know, just shadows moving under the floorboards." She shrugged. "Just a dumb dream." After dropping Emma at school, Nathan drove to the county records office. Bam. If his grandfather's land was truly divided among three families, there should be official records somewhere. The clerk, a woman in her 60s who'd worked there longer than Nathan had been alive, recognized him immediately. "Nathan Miller, haven't seen you in ages. How's that sweet daughter of yours?" "Growing too fast," Nathan replied with a tired smile. "I need to look at the property records for my farm, the original deeds if possible." Hours later, Nathan left more confused than when he'd arrived. According to all official records, the land had been in the Miller family name continuously since 1852, when Samuel Miller had purchased it from the territorial government. There was no mention of any Harrison or Cross. Either the documents in the metal box were elaborate fakes or the official records had been altered. The bank foreclosure notice sitting in his mailbox when he returned home only added to his stress. 6 months behind on the mortgage, the letter warned. "Final notice before proceedings begin." Nathan crumpled it in his fist. He'd been struggling to keep the farm afloat since Sarah's medical bills had drained their savings, but he'd promised her he'd keep her family home for Emma. He couldn't lose it now. That night, after Emma had gone to bed complaining of more strange dreams, Nathan heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps in the barn. He grabbed his shotgun from the locked cabinet and moved silently across the yard, adrenaline sharpening his senses. The barn door stood slightly ajar, though Nathan distinctly remembered closing it. He eased it open, wincing at the creak of hinges. Moonlight spilled through the gaps in the siding, illuminating the interior in strips of silver and shadow. The floorboards that concealed the tunnel entrance had been removed. Nathan approached cautiously, his shotgun ready. Voices drifted up from below, hushed, indistinct murmurs. More than one person was down there. He considered confronting them, but thought better of it. He didn't know how many people were in the tunnel or what they were doing. Better to gather information first. The next day, Nathan installed motion-activated cameras in the barn, positioning them to capture the tunnel entrance and anyone who might use it. That night, he sat in the darkness of his kitchen, watching the live feed on his laptop. For hours, nothing moved. Then just after midnight, the camera activated. 3 shadowy figures entered the barn, moving with the confidence of people who believed they were unobserved. They removed the floorboards with practiced ease and descended into the tunnel. Nathan zoomed in on the footage, trying to make out their faces, but they wore hats pulled low and kept their backs to the camera. Over the next week, a pattern emerged. The figures would arrive after midnight, spend several hours in the tunnel, and leave before dawn. Nathan documented everything, saving the footage, building a case, though, for what purpose he wasn't yet sure. All he knew was that strangers were accessing his property through a secret tunnel his grandfather had built, and somehow it connected to the mysterious agreement in those century-old documents. Emma's nightmares intensified. She began sleepwalking, something she'd never done before, and twice Nathan found her standing at the window that faced the barn, staring out into the darkness. When he mentioned taking her to a doctor, she became unusually defensive. "I'm fine, Dad. It's just school stress." But the dark circles under her eyes told a different story. Nathan was replacing a fence post at the property's edge when he heard a car approaching, an unusual occurrence for their isolated farm. A sleek black SUV wound its way up the dirt drive, kicking up dust that glowed golden in the late afternoon sun. The vehicle stopped and a woman emerged. Tall, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, she moved with purpose as she approached. "Nathan Miller." Her voice carried across the field. Nathan set down his tools, wiping his hands on his jeans as he walked to meet her. "That's me. Can I help you?" The woman extended her hand. "Rachel Harrison. I believe we need to talk." Nathan's heart skipped a beat at the surname. Harrison, like Thomas Harrison, one of the signatures on his grandfather's contract. He shook her hand automatically, in his mind racing. "Talk about what exactly?" Rachel's gaze shifted to the barn, then back to Nathan. "About the tunnel you found beneath your barn, and about the agreement between our grandfathers." Nathan felt as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. He'd told no one about his discovery. "How could you possibly know about that?" "Because I've been looking for it for years." Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "My grandfather left very specific instructions about this property and what lies beneath it. When I saw the motion alerts on our security system, I knew someone had finally found the entrance." "Your security system?" Nathan's voice hardened. "Those are my cameras, on my property." Rachel shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "The cameras in your barn, yes, but there are others, older ones, installed decades ago, maintained by my family for generations." Nathan's world tilted off its axis. Strangers had been monitoring his property, his home, for years without his knowledge. The revelation sent a chill down his spine. This is private property. You and whoever else has been sneaking around need to leave, or I'm calling the sheriff. That would be a mistake. Rachel opened the folder and handed him a document identical to the one he'd found in the metal box. According to this contract signed by Samuel Miller, Thomas Harrison, and William Cross in 1852, 1/3 of this land legally belongs to my family. I have every right to be here. Nathan snatched the paper, comparing it to his mental image of the document he'd found. The signatures matched perfectly. These could be forgeries. They're not, and I think you know that. Rachel's expression softened slightly. I'm not here to take your home, Nathan. I'm here because something valuable was discovered on this land in 1852, something the three families agreed to share secretly rather than let the territorial government claim it. My grandfather's journals called it the discovery that would change everything, but he never wrote down what it actually was. Nathan thought of the freshly used living space in the tunnel, the recent footprints. And the people who've been using the tunnel recently, are they with you? Rachel's brow furrowed. No one from my family has been in that tunnel in years, not since my grandfather died. Her gaze darted toward the barn again, concern etching lines around her eyes. If someone's been down there recently, it could be the Cross family. The contract expires next month, and according to my grandfather's journals, that's when we're supposed to divide what was found. From inside the house, Emma's voice called out, Dad, who are you talking to? Nathan turned to see his daughter standing on the porch, her expression curious as she studied the stranger. Just someone asking for directions, he called back, not ready to explain the truth. Go finish your homework, I'll be right in. When he turned back to Rachel, her expression had changed, a new tension in her shoulders. You have a daughter, she said, her voice tight. You didn't mention that. Why would I, and why does it matter? A protective instinct flared in Nathan's chest. Because children are more sensitive to certain energies. Rachel closed her folder with a snap. Has she been having nightmares? Sleepwalking? Talking about people under the ground? Nathan's blood ran cold. How could you possibly know that? It happened to me too when I was about her age. My father called it the awakening. It's why I started researching our family's connection to this place. Rachel glanced at her watch. I need to go, but we should continue this conversation. And soon, before the Cross family makes their move. What move? What are you talking about? Rachel was already walking back to her SUV. Check the southeast corner of the tunnel. There's a hidden panel in the wall. You'll find more information there. And Nathan, she paused at her car door. Be careful who you trust. Not everyone involved in this has honorable intentions. As the SUV disappeared down the drive, Emma appeared at Nathan's side. She wasn't lost, was she? She asked, her eyes wise beyond her years. Nathan struggled with how much to tell his daughter. He'd never lied to her, not about her mother's illness, not about their financial struggles, not about anything that mattered. But this felt different, potentially dangerous. No, she wasn't lost, he admitted finally. She's connected to some old family business, nothing for you to worry about. Emma's expression made it clear she didn't believe him. Is it about the people under the ground, the ones in my dreams? Nathan knelt to her, level hands on her shoulders. What exactly do you see in these dreams, Em? Men digging, looking for something valuable. They're afraid someone will take it from them. Emma's eyes took on a distant quality. One of them looks like the picture of Grandpa Samuel in the living room, but younger. That night, after tucking Emma in, Nathan returned to the barn with a more powerful flashlight and a determined set to his jaw. The tunnel entrance gaped open in the floor darkness yawning below. He descended the stairs and moved through the living space, noticing new details. Fresh supplies had been added since his last visit. Someone had been here very recently. He followed the tunnel deeper than he'd gone before, the passage narrowing as it extended beneath his property. The air grew cooler, the earthen walls giving way to stone in places. Nathan counted his steps, trying to orient himself relative to the buildings above. After about 50 yards, the tunnel curved sharply to the southeast, exactly where Rachel had told him to look. The wall appeared solid at first glance, but when Nathan ran his hands over the surface, he felt a slight difference in texture in one section. Pressing firmly, he was rewarded with a soft click as a hidden panel slid aside, revealing a recess containing a leather-bound journal and a tarnished metal key. The journal bore his grandfather's initials embossed on the cover. Nathan opened it with trembling fingers, the paper fragile with age. Inside, in his grandfather's careful script, was a detailed account of a discovery made in 1852. A discovery that had bound three families together in a conspiracy of silence for generations. As Nathan read by flashlight beam, the pieces began to fall into place. The tunnel system was far more extensive than he'd imagined, branching out beneath the entire property. And it had been built for a very specific purpose, one that explained the secrecy, the divided ownership, and the recent activity. But before he could read further, a sound froze him in place. Footsteps, multiple sets approaching from deeper in the tunnel. Nathan quickly replaced the journal, and Key closed the hidden panel and pressed himself against the wall in the shadows. Three figures approached, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of oil lamps they carried. Two younger men followed an older one with a commanding presence. Nathan recognized the older man from the security footage. He'd been the most frequent visitor to the tunnel. "The Miller boy has discovered the entrance," the older man was saying, his voice carrying easily in the confined space. "And Harrison's granddaughter has made contact. We're running out of time." "What about the sealed chambers?" one of the younger men asked. "Father, we need access before the contract expires." "Patience, Victor," the older man replied. "We've waited 50 years for this moment. A few more days won't matter." Nathan's foot dislodged a small stone, sending it skittering across the floor. The sound, tiny though it was, echoed in the tunnel. The three men froze, then the oil lamps swung in his direction. "Who's there?" the older man demanded. "Show yourself." Nathan considered running, but knew he'd never make it back to the entrance before they caught him. Better to face them directly. He stepped into the light, squinting against the sudden brightness. "I'm Nathan Miller. This is my property you're trespassing on." The older man chuckled, a sound without humor. "Victor Cross, Sura." He introduced himself with a slight bow. "And these are my sons, James and Michael. As for trespassing, I believe you'll find we have as much right to be here as you do." "The contract," Nathan said, understanding dawning. "You're William Cross's descendants." "Very good." Victor studied Nathan with shrewd eyes. "So you found the documents. Has Rachel Harrison filled your head with her family's version of events? Yet you should know she can't be trusted." "And you can show," Nathan countered, acutely aware of his vulnerable position. The Crossmen outnumbered him 3-1, and he was unarmed. Victor smiled thinly. "We're all bound by the same agreement, Mr. Miller. The only difference is that my family has been maintaining these tunnels for generations, protecting what lies in the sealed chambers until the contract expires." His eyes narrowed. "While your family seems to have forgotten its obligations entirely." "What exactly is in these sealed chambers?" Nathan demanded. The journal mentioned a discovery, but not what it was. Victor exchanged glances with his sons. "So you haven't gotten that far in your research. Interesting." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "What would you say, Mr. Miller, if I told you that beneath this ordinary-looking farm lies something worth millions? Something that would solve your financial difficulties?" Nathan stiffened. "How do you know about my financial situation?" "We make it our business to know everything about this property and its inhabitants." Victor gestured around the tunnel. "These passageways extend far beyond what you've seen. Some lead to observation points we've maintained for decades." The realization that these strangers had been watching him and Emma sent a surge of protective rage through Nathan. "Stay away from my daughter," he growled. "Your daughter is of no interest to us," Victor replied coolly. "Unless, of course, she's been experiencing unusual dreams lately. Children are often more sensitive to certain, influences." The echo of Rachel's earlier words sent a chill down Nathan's spine. "What influences?" Instead of answering, Victor turned to his sons. "James, Michael, I believe Mr. Miller should see what lies at the end of the main tunnel. Perhaps then he'll understand the gravity of our shared inheritance." The younger men moved to flank Nathan, not touching him, but clearly intending to escort him deeper into the tunnel system. Nathan considered fighting his way out, but curiosity won out. If he was going to protect Emma and their home, he needed to understand what he was dealing with. They walked in silence for several minutes, the tunnel sloping gradually downward. Nathan estimated they were now at least 20 feet below the surface. The air grew damper, the walls glistening with moisture. Finally, they reached what appeared to be a dead end, a solid wall of packed earth reinforced with timber. Victor stepped forward, inserting an old iron key into what Nathan had assumed was simply a knot in the wood. A section of the wall swung inward, revealing a chamber that stretched far beyond what Nathan had imagined possible. The light from their lamps reflected off metal containers lining wooden shelves along the walls. Tools for mining lay scattered across the floor, and deep gouges in the rock walls showed where something had been systematically extracted over decades. 50 years of work, Victor said, his voice reverent as he ran his hand along the empty shelves. Generations of secret mining, all of it about to pay off when the contract expires next month. Mining what? Nathan asked, though a suspicion was forming in his mind. Victor smiled, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Silver, Mr. Miller. A vein running directly under this property that your grandfather and our grandfathers decided to mine in secret. No taxes, no government oversight, no legal complications. Just pure profit divided equally among three families. Nathan examined the mining tools more closely. Unlike the shelves and containers which showed their age, these looked recently used. The metal wasn't rusted, and there was fresh dust on the handles. Someone's been working down here recently, he observed. My sons and I have been extracting the last accessible ore before the contract expires, Victor confirmed. The original agreement states that when the contract ends, we divide everything equally, the silver, the land, everything. And what happens to my home, my daughter's inheritance? Victor's expression hardened. That depends entirely on you, Mr. Miller. Your grandfather's share of the silver is worth millions, enough to solve your financial problems many times over. But only if you honor the original agreement, which is keep the secret, help us complete the final extraction, and when the time comes, ensure that all three families receive their fair share. Victor's gaze bored into Nathan's. If you try to claim everything for yourself, or worse, involve the authorities, you'll lose not just the silver, but your home as well. The legal documents we possess would be enough to tie this property up in court for years. The threat was clear. Nathan thought of Emma, of the promise he'd made to his dying wife to keep her family home safe. He thought of the bank's foreclosure notice. Millions would solve everything, but at what cost? Before he could respond, a new sound echoed through the chamber, footsteps approaching rapidly from the tunnel behind them. The crossmen tensed Victor's hand, moving inside his jacket as if reaching for a weapon. Rachel Harrison appeared in the entrance, breathing hard as if she'd run the entire way. Her eyes widened at the sight of Nathan with the Cross family. "Nathan, don't listen to them," she gasped. "They're not telling you everything." Victor's expression darkened. Miss Harrison, always showing up at the most inconvenient moments. "He needs to know the truth, Victor." Rachel insisted, her gaze locked with Nathan's. "About what really happened in 1852. About why our grandfathers sealed that final chamber and swore never to open it until the contract expired." "What final chamber?" Nathan demanded, looking between them. Rachel pointed to the far end of the room where the rock wall appeared solid. "There's another sealed chamber beyond this one. Something our grandfathers found that was more valuable and more dangerous than silver." Victor stepped between them, his stance threatening. "That's enough, Miss Harrison. Some secrets are better left buried." "Not anymore," Rachel countered. "Not with what's been happening to the children. Nathan's daughter is having the dreams, isn't she? Just like I did. Just like Victor's granddaughter did before she—" "Silence," Victor thundered, his composure finally cracking. He turned to his sons. "Get her out of here, now." The younger men moved toward Rachel, but she stood her ground. "Nathan deserves to know what his daughter is sensing, what's affecting her sleep, her peace of mind." Nathan stepped in between Rachel and the Cross, men, his protective instincts flaring. "Nobody touches her, and nobody leaves until I get some straight answers. What exactly is my daughter sensing? What's in that final chamber?" A sudden crash from above made them all freeze, the sound of the barn door being thrown open with force. Seconds later, panicked footsteps pounded down the tunnel stairs. "Dad!" Emma's terrified voice echoed through the passageway. "Dad, where are you?" Nathan's heart leaped into his throat. "Emma, stay where you are, I'm coming." But his daughter's footsteps grew closer, her breathing ragged with fear as she ran blindly through the darkened tunnel. "Dad, There are people in the house. They're looking for something. Victor and Rachel exchanged alarmed glances, momentarily united by this unexpected development. Who else knows about this place? Nathan demanded, already moving toward his daughter's voice. No one, Victor insisted. Just our families. Rachel shook her head. Unless... Imama appeared at the chamber entrance, her face pale with fear, her pajamas rumpled as if she'd leapt from bed. She froze at the sight of the strangers, instinctively running to her father's side. There are men in the house, she whispered, clinging to Nathan. They have guns. They said they were looking for the entrance. Nathan pulled his daughter close, his mind racing. Did they see you? Umma shook her head. I hid under my bed when I heard them. Then I climbed out my window and ran to the barn because I knew. I just knew you'd be down here. Victor's face had gone ashen. It's starting already. The contract doesn't expire for another month, but someone else knows. Someone who doesn't care about our agreement. Rachel moved closer to Nathan and Emma, her voice low and urgent. We need to seal the tunnel entrance. Now, before they find it. Nathan looked from Rachel to Victor, then down at his frightened daughter. Whatever was happening, whatever secrets lay buried beneath his land, nothing mattered more than Emma's safety. He made his decision in an instant. Show me how to seal it, he said, already moving toward the tunnel entrance. And then you're all going to tell me exactly what's going on here. No more secrets. Not when my daughter's safety is at stake. As they raced back through the tunnel, the sound of furniture being overturned echoed from above. Whoever was searching the house was getting closer to the barn. Nathan's grip on Emma's hand tightened as a new fear gripped him, not just for their immediate safety, but for what these intruders represented. The agreement between three families had held for generations, a secret preserved in darkness beneath the earth. But now that secret was unraveling, exposed to the light. And as Nathan hurried his daughter through the underground passageway that had been hidden beneath his feet all these years, he realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The life he'd built, the promises he'd made, the future he'd planned, all of it was about to change forever. Heavy boots thudded on the barn floor above as they reached the main living space in the tunnel. The intruders were getting closer. Nathan looked at Victor and Rachel, united momentarily by a common thread, and saw his own fear reflected in their eyes. The past was catching up to all of them, a reckoning generations in the making. And as the first board was pried up from above, revealing a rectangle of night sky and the silhouette of an unknown figure, Nathan knew they had run out of time. Whatever secrets lay buried beneath his land, whatever agreement had bound three families together for over a century, the truth was about to be revealed, and there would be no going back. Victor's son, James, lunged forward, seizing the intruder's ankle as the boot appeared through the opening. The man above cried out in surprise, losing his balance. Rachel grabbed Emma, pulling her deeper into the tunnel as Nathan and Michael rushed to help James. The three men yanked hard, dragging the intruder through the opening. He fell heavily onto the dirt floor, cursing, as Victor quickly pressed a knee into his back. Who are you? Victor's voice cut through the darkness. Who sent you? The man struggled beneath Victor's weight, his face pressed into the dirt. Go to hell. Nathan grabbed the fallen flashlight, illuminating the scene. The intruder wore dark clothing with no identifying marks, his face obscured by a black ski mask. No ordinary burglar would dress like this. This was someone who came prepared, someone who knew what they were looking for. The sound of more footsteps crossing the barn floor above made them all freeze. Victor nodded to his sons, who immediately moved to flank the opening, prepared to ambush the next intruder. Nathan pushed past them, his parental instinct overriding all else. Emma's still up there. Rachel's grip on his arm stopped him. Emma's here with me. She's safe. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But we won't be for long if those men find us. A beam of light shot down through the opening as another flashlight swept the area. A gruff voice called from above. Jensen, you find something. The captured intruder remained silent. Victor's hand now clamped firmly over his mouth. James reached up slowly, dragging the loose floorboards back into place, closing off the opening inch by careful inch. Jensen, the voice grew irritated. Answer me, damn it. With the last board back in place, they were plunged into near darkness, the only light coming from Nathan's flashlight pointed at the ground. They listened as footsteps moved across the barn floor, stopping directly above them. Spread out, ordered the voice above. He's got to be around here somewhere. Minutes passed in tense silence, the group hardly daring to breathe. The captured intruder had stopped struggling, seemingly resigned to his situation. Eventually, the footsteps above moved away, doors slammed, and engines roared to life outside. Victor finally released his hold on the man, pulling off the ski mask to reveal a middle-aged face with hard eyes and a scar running along his jaw. "Last chance! Who are you working for?" The man spat on the ground. "You think you're the only ones who know about what's down here? The contract expires next month. Finders keepers." Nathan moved closer, anger building inside him. "Those men are in my house, where my daughter sleeps." His fist clenched involuntarily. "If anything had happened to her, your daughter means nothing to us," the man replied coldly. "The silver is all that matters." Emma's small voice came from behind Rachel. "What's silver, Tom?" Nathan turned to his daughter, seeing the confusion and fear in her eyes. She had heard everything, the tunnels, the mining, the secret that had been buried beneath their farm for generations. How could he explain this to a 12-year-old? How could he make her understand that her home, her inheritance was built on deception? Victor nodded to his sons. "Secure him. We need to move deeper into the tunnel system in case they come back." He turned to Nathan. "We'll use the northwestern passage. It connects to the root cellar in your house. You can get your daughter safely inside that way." And then what? Nathan's patience had reached its limit. "More strangers invade my property, threaten my family, and you still haven't explained what's really going on here. What's in that final sealed chamber that has everyone so spooked?" Victor and Rachel exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between longtime adversaries who suddenly found themselves on the same side. It was Rachel who finally spoke. "The sealed chamber contains the original discoverer of the silver vein, or more precisely, his remains." The revelation hung in the air, heavy as the earth above them. Nathan looked from Rachel to Victor, searching for any sign of deception. "Someone died down here." "Not just died." Victor's voice hardened. "According to my grandfather's journals, the original discoverer was murdered by our grandfathers. They buried him in that sealed chamber and built their secret mining operation literally on top of his grave." Emma pressed closer to Nathan, her eyes wide with horror. The captured intruder laughed bitterly. "Now you're getting to the good part. Tell him the rest. Tell him about the curse." Rachel shot the man a venomous look. "There's no curse, just consequences. Actions that echo through generations." Victor's sons returned with rope, quickly binding the intruder's hands and feet. James produced a handkerchief, which he tied around the man's mouth as a gag. "What do we do with him?" "Leave him here for now," Victor decided. "We need to get somewhere safer and figure out our next move." They moved deeper into the tunnel system, following the Victor's lead through passageways that twisted and turned like a snake beneath the earth. Nathan carried Emma when the ceiling grew too low for her to walk upright. The captured intruder was dragged along by Michael, his muffled protests ignored. After what seemed like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, they reached a junction where several tunnels converged. Victor pointed to one that sloped gently upward. "That one leads to your root cellar. The entrance is concealed behind the old wine rack." Nathan shook his head in disbelief. "All these years and I never knew." "Your grandfather made sure of that." Rachel's voice was tinged with bitterness. "After my grandfather died, Samuel Miller did everything he could to erase the memory of their agreement. He wanted it all for himself." "That's not true." "Cha." Nathan protested automatically, though doubt crept in. He didn't really know what his grandfather had been capable of. The evidence surrounding him, the elaborate tunnel system, the secret mining operation, the murdered discoverer, painted a picture of a man very different from the kindly grandfather he remembered. Victor interrupted the brewing argument. "This isn't the time for family grievances. Those men will be back and in greater numbers. They know about the silver, and they're not going to stop until they find it." "But who are they?" Emma asked, her young voice cutting through the tension. "And how did they find out about the tunnels?" It was a good question, one that had been nagging at Nathan since the intruders first appeared. Someone had leaked information, or perhaps the secret had never been as well kept as the three families believed. Rachel knelt to Emma's level. "That's what we need to find out. But first we need to make sure you and your dad are safe." The northwestern passage eventually opened into the root cellar of the farmhouse, just as Victor had said. Nathan pushed aside the old wine rack that had stood in the same spot for as long as he could remember, revealing a door perfectly camouflaged to match the stone wall behind it. The house above was eerily silent, the intruders apparently gone for now. Nathan led Emma up the cellar stairs, checking each room for signs of the search. The living room had been ransacked furniture, overturned books pulled from shelves. In the kitchen drawers, hung open, their contents spilled across the floor. Nathan's heart sank as he saw the extent of the violation. This wasn't just his home, it was the last connection Emma had to her mother, and these strangers had desecrated it in their search for buried treasure. Victor surveyed the damage with a clinical eye. They were looking for documentation, maps, deeds, anything that might lead them to the sealed chamber. "Did they find anything?" Rachel asked, picking up a framed photo of Nathan's wife that had been knocked to the floor, its glass cracked. Nathan shook his head. "All the documents I found were in the metal box, and that's still hidden in the tunnel." Emma tugged at her father's sleeve. "Dad, my project folder is gone, the one with all the family history stuff for school." Nathan's blood ran cold. Emma's research for her history project had she unknowingly collected information about the tunnel system, about the three families and their secret agreement. What exactly was in that folder, Em? Emma bit her lip, thinking. "Copies of old photos I found in the attic, some newspaper clippings about great-grandpa Samuel, and a map I found in one of his old books. It looked like the farm, but with weird markings all over it." Victor and Rachel exchanged alarmed glances. Nathan knelt in front of his daughter, keeping his voice calm despite the panic rising within him. "What kind of markings, Emma?" "Like dots and lines connecting different parts of the property. I thought it was for irrigation or something." Emma's eyes widened with realization. It was showing the tunnels, wasn't it? Nathan nodded grimly. "Those men now have a map of the tunnel system. We're not safe here. We need to move the silver," Victor declared. "Everything we've accumulated over the years. If they find the main storage chamber—" "You're missing the point," Rachel interrupted. "They're not just after the silver. They want what's in the sealed chamber too. They know about the original discoverer." Nathan's patience finally snapped. "Enough half-truths and vague warnings. I want the full story right now. Who was the original discoverer? Why was he killed, and what's really in that final chamber that has everyone so afraid?" Victor sighed heavily, suddenly looking every year of his age. His name was Roberto Vasquez. He found the silver vein in 1851 and approached our grandfathers as potential partners. They agreed to help him establish a legal claim. But instead, they murdered him and stole his discovery. Rachel continued, her voice tight with old shame. "They divided the silver among themselves and buried Vasquez in the tunnel to hide their crime." "In the dreams, Emma's nightmares," Nathan pressed. Rachel and Victor exchanged uncomfortable glances. It was Victor who finally answered. "According to my grandfather's journal, children in our families have always been sensitive to Vasquez's presence. The closer we get to the contract's expiration date, the stronger the connection becomes. So my daughter is having nightmares because our grandfathers committed murder." Nathan's voice rose in disbelief. "And you've known about this all along?" "We've all had to live with the consequences of what they did," Rachel said quietly, "each generation dealing with it in their own way. Some through denial, some through atonement, and some through profit," Victor added grimly. "The silver mined from this land has supported all three families for generations. We're all complicit, whether we knew it or not." A new thought struck Nathan, making his blood run cold. These intruders, could they be Vasquez's descendants looking for justice? Before anyone could answer, a noise from outside caught their attention. Car engines approaching. Victor moved to the window, peering through the curtains. "They're back, at least 3 vehicles." Nathan made a split-second decision. "We need to get Emma out of here, now." He turned to his daughter. "Go pack a bag, just essentials. 5 minutes." As Emma ran upstairs, Nathan grabbed his truck keys and an old shotgun from the closet. "I'm taking her to my sister's place in town. She'll be safe there." "You can't just leave," Victor protested. "We need to protect the silver." "I don't give a damn about your silver." Nathan's voice cut through the room like a whip. "My daughter comes first. Always." Rachel stepped between them. "He's right, Victor. The child needs to be somewhere safe." She turned to Nathan. "But you should know this won't end until the contract expires and what's in that sealed chamber is finally dealt with." "One problem at a time," Nathan replied, checking the shotgun's ammunition. "First I get Emma to safety, Then we figure out who these intruders are and what they really want. Emma returned with a small backpack, her face pale but determined. Nathan could see his late wife's strength in their daughter's eyes, the same resiliency that had carried Sarah through months of cancer treatments before the disease finally took her. "Ready?" he asked softly. Emma nodded, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was a toddler, the last birthday present her mother had given her. "What about them?" She gestured toward Victor, Rachel, and the others. "Will they be okay?" Nathan looked at the unlikely allies fate had thrown together, three families bound by a century-old secret finally facing the consequences of their grandfather's actions. "They'll manage. Right now we need to worry about ourselves." They slipped out the back door as headlights swept across the front of the house. Nathan led Emma through the darkness to where his truck was parked behind the barn, hidden from view of the approaching vehicles. As they climbed in, the sound of men's voices carried through the night air. "Check the barn again. The entrance has to be there somewhere." Nathan started the engine, keeping the headlights off as he steered the truck down the back access road that wound through his property. In the rearview mirror, flashlight beams crisscrossed the yard as the intruders began their search. Victor and Rachel had retreated back into the tunnel system, taking Victor's sons and their captive with them. Nathan could only hope they'd remain hidden until he could return. As they reached the main road, Nathan finally switched on the headlights, accelerating toward town. Beside him, Emma sat silently, clutching her backpack. "It's going to be okay," he assured her, though the words rang hollow even to his own ears. Nothing about this situation was okay. "They killed someone, didn't they?" Emma's voice was small in the darkness of the truck cab. "Our family. They killed that man and took his silver." Nathan gripped the steering wheel tighter, struggling with how to explain generational guilt to a 12-year-old. "What happened back then? It was wrong. Terribly wrong. But you and we didn't do those things. But we're living in the house they built with stolen silver," Emma pointed out with the simple clarity of a child. "We're still benefiting from what they did." Her words struck Nathan like a physical blow. She was right, of course. The farm, the house, everything they had, it all stemmed from that original crime. A man had died so that the Miller family could prosper. How could he reconcile that with the values he tried to instill in his daughter? "Sometimes people make terrible choices," he said finally, "and sometimes their descendants have to find a way to make things right." He glanced at Emma. "That's what we're going to do, somehow." The drive to Nathan's sister Diane's house took 20 minutes each passing mile, increasing the distance between them and the danger at the farm, but doing nothing to ease the weight on Nathan's conscience. By the time they pulled into Diane's driveway, Emma had fallen into an uneasy sleep, her head resting against the window. Diane opened the door in her bathrobe, confusion turning to concern at the sight of her brother's face. "Nathan, what's going on? It's almost midnight." Nathan carried the sleeping Emma inside, laying her gently on the living room couch. "I need a favor, Di. Emma needs to stay with you for a few days." "Of course, but—" Diane lowered her voice, noticing Emma stirring. "What's happened? Is it the bank? Did they finally—" "It's not the bank." "Not exactly." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, the events of the night catching up with him. How could he possibly explain the tangle of secrets, lies, and hidden tunnels that had upended their lives in the span of a few hours? "It's complicated. Just keep her safe. Don't let anyone know she's here, and don't go back to the farm for any reason. Promise me." Diane's expression grew more worried. "Nathan, you're scaring me. Should I call the police?" "No police." The words came out sharper than he intended. "Sorry, it's just the less people involved, the better. I'll explain everything when I can. Right now, I need to get back to the farm." Emma stirred on the couch, her eyes fluttering open. "Dad," Nathan knelt beside her. "Hey, kiddo, you're going to stay with Aunt Diane for a little while, okay? Just until I sort things out at home." "You're going back," fear crept into Emma's voice. "But those men—" "I'll be careful." Nathan squeezed her hand. "I need to help Rachel and the others. We need to find out who those men are and what they really want." Emma sat up suddenly, fully awake. "It's about the dreams, isn't it? About the man under the ground?" Nathan hesitated, then nodded. Some instinct told him honesty was the only path forward now. "Yes, we need to find out what really happened to him. And maybe find a way to make it right." Emma reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made a copy of the map, the one the men took. I thought it might be important for my project. Nathan unfolded the paper, amazed at the detailed rendering of the tunnel system. The map was old, the paper yellowed with age, but Emma had meticulously traced every line, every marking. Including Nathan realized with a jolt the location of the sealed chamber. Emma, this is incredibly helpful. He studied the map more closely, noticing details he hadn't seen in his brief exploration of the tunnels. Where did you find the original? In the attic, in a box marked Samuel Private. There were lots of papers and journals, but this was hidden in a false bottom of the box. Emma's eyes met his. I wasn't snooping, Dad. Not really. It was for school. Nathan felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. His daughter had unknowingly uncovered a century-old conspiracy, piecing together clues that had eluded him entirely. You're not in trouble, Em. In fact, you might have just given us exactly what we need. After making sure Emma was settled with Diane, extracting multiple promises that they would stay put and contact no one, Nathan headed back to the farm. The map Emma had copied rested on the passenger seat, its markings now burning in his memory. If the intruders had the original, they would be heading for the sealed chamber, the final resting place of Roberto Vasquez and whatever secrets died with him. As Nathan approached his property, he cut the headlights, an engine coasting the last quarter mile in darkness. The farm appeared deserted, the intruders' vehicles gone, but Nathan wasn't fooled. They might have retreated temporarily, regrouping for a more thorough search. Or worse, they might have already found what they were looking for. He parked behind a stand of trees and approached the house on foot, moving silently through the familiar terrain. The back door stood ajar, swinging gently in the night breeze. Nathan slipped inside, shotgun ready, listening for any sound that might betray an intruder's presence. The house remained as they had left it, ransacked but empty. The root cellar door was open, revealing the stone steps descending into darkness. Nathan made his way down cautiously, finding the hidden door in the wall already pushed aside. Someone had discovered the northwestern passage. The tunnel beyond was silent, the darkness absolute. Nathan switched on his flashlight, keeping the beam pointed downward to minimize its visibility from a distance. He moved deeper into the tunnel system, following the path marked on Emma's copy of the map. According to the markings, there was a junction ahead that would lead directly to the main chamber where Victor had shown him the mining operation. As he approached the junction, Nathan heard voices, hushed but urgent. He pressed himself against the tunnel wall, extinguishing his light. The voices grew clearer as they approached. Have to move everything tonight. Once they realize Jensen is missing, they'll be back in force. Nathan recognized Victor's voice, followed by Rachel's response. And go where we can't exactly walk into town with crates of silver. We need a plan, not a panic response. The contract expires in 28 days, Victor argued. If we can hold them off until then, the silver is legally ours to divide. We just need to protect the sealed chamber until... The sealed chamber is what they're really after, Rachel interrupted. You know that as well as I do. The silver is secondary. Their footsteps and voices receded as they moved past Nathan's hiding spot, heading toward another branch of the tunnel system. Nathan waited until they were gone before continuing toward the main chamber, guided by Emma's map and his own memory of the route. The chamber, when he reached it, was a hive of activity. Victor's sons James and Michael were busy loading silver ingots into wooden crates. The captive intruder sat propped against one wall, still bound and gagged, watching the proceedings with hateful eyes. He noticed Nathan first, his gaze shifting to the entrance, alerting the others to Nathan's presence. James reached for a weapon, but Nathan stepped into the light, hands raised. It's just me. Michael relaxed visibly. Where's your daughter? Somewhere safe. Nathan surveyed the operation. Dozens of crates were stacked against the walls, each presumably filled with silver, the accumulated wealth of generations of secret mining hidden from the world. What's the plan here? Father wants to move everything to a secure location, James explained, until we figure out who these intruders are and what they're really after. Nathan pulled Emma's copied map from his pocket, unfolding it on a wooden table. I think I might be able to help with that. The brothers crowded around the map, their eyes widening as they took in the detailed rendering of the tunnel system. James ran his finger along one particularly an intricate section. This is incredible. It shows passages even we didn't know about. And it shows exactly where the sealed chamber is located, Nathan pointed out, indicating a marked area deep within the system. Which means if the intruders have the original, they're heading there right now. The captive intruder made muffled sounds behind his gag, struggling against his bonds with renewed vigor. Michael yanked the gag down, allowing the man to speak. You're all dead, the intruder spat. You think a few crates of silver are worth dying for. You have no idea what's coming for you. Nathan approached the bound man, studying his face. There was something familiar about his features, something that nagged at the edge of Nathan's memory. Who are you working for? The man smiled coldly. Someone who's waited a very long time for justice. The descendants of Roberto Vasquez send their regards. The revelation sent a chill through the chamber. Nathan's suspicion had been correct. These were not random thieves, but people with a direct connection to the man murdered and buried beneath this land. People seeking vengeance for a century-old crime. What do they want? Nathan asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Everything, the intruder replied simply. The silver, the land, and most of all, the truth. No more secrets, no more lies. No more prospering from a murdered man's discovery. The sound of approaching footsteps silenced further conversation. Victor and Rachel appeared at the chamber entrance, their faces registering surprise at Nathan's presence. Where's Emma? Rachel asked immediately. With my sister in town. Safe. Nathan held up the copied map. Emma made this. It shows the entire tunnel system, including the sealed chamber. Victor took the map, his expression darkening as he studied it. If the intruders have the original, they're Vasquez's descendants, Nathan said flatly. They're here for justice, not just silver. Rachel paled visibly. How do you know? Nathan nodded toward the captive. He told us, and judging by how quickly they found the tunnel entrance, they've been planning this for a long time. Victor folded the map carefully, his decision made. We need to get to the sealed chamber before they do. If they find what's really in there. What exactly is in there? Nathan demanded. You said it contains Vasquez's remains, but there's more to it than that, isn't there? What are you not telling me? Rachel and Victor exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. It was Rachel who finally answered. The sealed chamber contains Vasquez's remains, yes, but it also contains his journal, the full account of what happened in 1851, including names, dates, and details that could still lead to criminal charges even after all this time. Accessory to murder doesn't have a statute of limitations, Victor added grimly. If that journal becomes public, all three of our families could face not just civil lawsuits, but criminal prosecution. Nathan tried to process this new information. So this isn't just about silver or land. It's about keeping a murder covered up. The weight of it settled over him like a shroud. Our grandfathers weren't just thieves, they were killers who never faced justice. They did what they thought was necessary at the time, Victor said defensively. It was a different era, a different... Murder is murder, Nathan cut him off, no matter when it happened. He thought of Emma, of the values he tried to instill in her. Honesty, integrity, justice. How could he face her if he helped cover up a crime, even one committed generations before her birth? A distant rumble interrupted his thoughts, not thunder, but the sound of an explosion echoing through the tunnel system. Dust rained down from the ceiling as the ground beneath their feet trembled. They're blasting their way in, Michael realized, grabbing for the nearest crate. We need to move. Now, there's no time to move everything. Victor countered it. We need to stop them before they reach the sealed chamber. Nathan studied the map again, tracing the most direct route to the sealed chamber. There's a passage here that looks like it intersects with their likely approach. We could cut them off. And do what? Rachel asked. These people are armed and clearly willing to use explosives. We can't just confront them directly. Nathan's mind raced, considering options. We don't need to fight them. We just need to get to the sealed chamber first. Remove Vasquez's journal before they find it. And then what? Victor demanded. That journal is the only proof of what really happened. Without it, they have nothing but family stories and rumors. Exactly, Nathan replied. And maybe that's for the best. Let the truth come out. Let Vasquez finally have justice, even if it's a century late. Victor's face contorted with anger. You're talking about destroying our families. Everything we've built, everything we have, was built on a murdered man's grave. Nathan finished for him. Maybe it's time we face that. Another explosion rocked the tunnel closer this time. Dust and small stones showered down around them. The captive intruder laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Too late. They're already inside. Victor made a split-second decision. James Michael, get as much silver out as you can. Use the northwestern passage. Rachel and I will go with Nathan to the sealed chamber. And him, James nodded toward their captive. Victor's expression hardened. Bring him. We might need leverage. They split up James and Michael, loading silver ingots into backpacks, while Victor, Rachel, and Nathan prepared to head for the sealed chamber. The captive was hauled to his feet, his bonds loosened just enough to allow him to walk between them. Nathan consulted the map one final time, committing the route to memory. The sealed chamber lay at the deepest point of the tunnel system, beyond the silver mining operation, in an area that, according to the map, had been deliberately collapsed after Vasquez's burial to conceal the location. We'll need to clear debris, he warned. The passage might be blocked. There's another way in, Victor revealed reluctantly, a back entrance that only the Cross family knows about. My grandfather showed it to my father, who showed it to me. It was meant to be our insurance policy. Rachel's expression betrayed her surprise and anger. You've had a secret entrance to the sealed chamber all this time, even from us. Trust was in short supply among our grandfathers, Victor replied unapologetically. Each family kept certain secrets from the others. I imagine the Harrisons and Millers did the same. Nathan thought of his own grandfather, of the hidden panel in the tunnel where he'd found the journal and key. He's right. Samuel had his secrets too. Another explosion much closer now sent them staggering as the floor beneath them shook violently. A crack appeared in the chamber ceiling, widening as they watched. We need to move, Rachel urged. Now. They hurried through the tunnel system, Victor leading the way, the captive intruder stumbling between Nathan and Rachel. The man's earlier bravado had faded, replaced by a growing nervousness as they moved deeper into the earth. You don't understand what you're dealing with, he muttered as they navigated a particularly narrow passage. It's not just about the journal or the silver. Then what is it about? Nathan pressed, pushing the man forward. The intruder glanced over his shoulder, his eyes reflecting the beam of Nathan's flashlight. Vasquez didn't just find silver here. He found something else. Something our family has been searching for ever since. Before Nathan could ask more, Victor halted at what appeared to be a solid wall of earth and stone. He ran his hands over the surface, feeling for something. A click, and a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a passage beyond. The Cross family secret entrance, Victor explained boastfully, known only to the eldest son of each generation. Until now. The passage beyond was narrow and clearly hadn't been used in years. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the air was stale with decades of stillness. They moved in single file, Victor first, then the captive, followed by Nathan and Rachel. After about 50 yards, the passage widened into a small antechamber. Victor held up his hands, signaling them to stop. The sealed chamber is just ahead. Once we open that door, there's no going back. We're past the point of no return already, Rachel pointed out. Let's get this over with. Victor produced an ancient-looking key from his pocket, similar to the one Nathan had found in his grandfather's hidden compartment. He approached a heavy wooden door set into the stone wall, its surface carved with symbols Nathan didn't recognize. What are those markings? Nathan asked, pointing to the door. Protection symbols, the captive intruder answered before Victor could speak. Your grandfathers weren't just hiding a body, they were containing something they feared. Victor ignored the comment, inserting the key into an almost invisible keyhole. The mechanism turned with surprising ease, as if it had been recently oiled and maintained. The door swung open silently, revealing the chamber beyond. The sealed chamber was larger than Nathan had expected, its walls lined with wooden shelving, similar to the silver storage area. But instead of silver ingots, these shelves held books, journals, and strange artifacts that seemed out of place in a mining operation. In the center of the room lay a simple wooden coffin, its lid secured with iron bands. Roberto Vasquez, Rachel whispered, approaching the coffin reverently. After all these years. Nathan moved deeper into the chamber, drawn to a leather-bound journal that sat on a small table beside the coffin. He reached for it, but Victor's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. Don't, Victor warned. That's what they're after. Vasquez's original journal. We need to know what's in it, Nathan argued, pulling his arm free. What really happened here? Before Victor could respond, a new voice echoed from the original entrance to the chamber, an entrance that, according to the map, should have been blocked by collapsed stone. I believe I can answer that question. They whirled to see an elderly woman standing in a now-open doorway, flanked by several armed men. She stepped into the chamber, her gaze moving from Victor to Rachel to Nathan, finally settling on the captive intruder. "Jensen, I see you've met the descendants of my grandfather's murderers." The captive Jensen nodded. "They took the bait, Elena, just like you said they would." Elena Vasquez moved further into the chamber, her eyes fixing on the wooden coffin. Despite her age, she carried herself with the straight-backed dignity of someone half her years. "For 50 years, my family has waited for this moment. For justice. For truth." Victor stepped forward, positioning himself between Elena and the coffin. "This is private property. You're trespassing." Elena's laugh was bitter and cold. "Private property. This land was stolen from Roberto Vasquez the night your grandfathers murdered him and buried him here. Everything you have, the land, the silver, the comfortable lives you've led, was built on his grave." "We didn't know," Rachel protested weakly. "Not until recently." "Ignorance is not innocence," Elena replied sharply. "Your families conspired to keep this secret buried for generations. You all benefited from a murder." Nathan studied Elena's face, seeing echoes of the captive's features. Family resemblance across generations. "You're Roberto's granddaughter, the great-granddaughter," Elena corrected. "His only child was my grandmother, who was born shortly after his murder. His wife was already pregnant when he disappeared." Her gaze hardened. "She spent the rest of her life searching for answers, passing that burden to my mother, who passed it to me." One of Elena's men moved to untie Jensen, who rubbed his wrists where the ropes had chafed the skin. "The tunnels are secure," Jensen reported. "We found most of the silver." "The silver is secondary." Elena waved a dismissive hand. "What matters is in this room." She approached the coffin, running her hand along the wooden surface. "My grandfather's remains, and his journal, which contains the truth your families have tried so hard to hide." Victor tensed, ready to intercept her if she reached for the journal on the table. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Some secrets were buried for a reason." "No more secrets," Elena declared firmly. "No more lies. The world will finally know what happened here in 1851, how Roberto Vasquez discovered something valuable, shared his find with men he thought were friends, and was murdered for his trust." Nathan found himself torn between the instinct to protect his family's legacy and the growing certainty that Elena was right. A man had been murdered, his discovery stolen, his body hidden away. Justice demanded the truth, no matter how painful. "What exactly did Roberto discover?" Nathan asked quietly. "You keep saying it wasn't just silver." Elena's eyes met his, measuring him. "Your daughter has been having dreams, hasn't she? About people under the ground, about a man searching for something precious." Nathan's blood ran cold. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because every child in my family has had those same dreams," Elena replied. "Generation after generation connected to Roberto's unfinished search, his unfinished life." She turned to the journal on the table, reaching for it before Victor could intervene. The book opened easily in her hands, the pages yellow with age, but the writing still clear and legible. "My grandfather's final entry," Elena read aloud, her voice carrying in the chamber's perfect acoustics. "They have agreed to meet me at dawn to discuss the partnership contracts. Samuel suggested we finalize everything in the tunnel system he has been building. I pray I am wrong about my suspicions, but I fear I will not see another sunrise." "Whoa." The words hung in the air, a voice from the past finally heard after more than a century of silence. Nathan looked at Victor and Rachel, seeing the same realization in their eyes their grandfathers had planned, the murder methodically luring Vasquez into the tunnels with promises of partnership intending all along to kill him and steal his discovery. "I want to know why," Nathan said finally. "Not just how it happened, but why. What was so valuable that it was worth killing for?" Elena closed the journal carefully. "That's the question, isn't it? What did Roberto find that was worth more than silver, more than gold?" She moved to the coffin, her hands working at the iron bands that secured the lid. "The answer lies with him." Victor stepped forward, his voice urgent. "Stop! You don't know what you're doing." But Elena continued, the last iron band falling away with a metallic clang. With help from Jensen, she pushed the heavy wooden lid aside, revealing the contents of the coffin for the first time in over a century. Inside lay the skeletal remains of a man, the bones darkened with age, but still intact. A silver crucifix rested on his chest, and beside the skull lay a leather pouch containing what appeared to be mining tools. But most damning of all was the bullet hole in the back of the skull, clear evidence of how Roberto Vasquez had died. Shot from behind, Elena said matter-of-factly. Murdered while examining the very silver vein he had discovered. Nathan felt sick, the physical evidence of his family's crime laid bare before him. This wasn't some abstract historical wrong. This was a real man who had been murdered, his life stolen, his body hidden away and forgotten. But Elena wasn't finished. She reached into the coffin, carefully moving the skeleton's hand aside to reveal what it had been clutching for over a century, a small leather-bound book different from the journal on the table. His personal diary, Elena explained, lifting the book with reverent hands. The one he kept separate from his official notes. The one that contains the true nature of what he found beneath this land. She opened the diary, turning to the final pages. Her expression changed as she read, a mixture of vindication and sorrow crossing her weathered face. Just as I always believed, she whispered. It wasn't just silver. What was it? Nathan asked, unable to contain his curiosity despite the horrifying scene before him. Elena looked up, her eyes meeting his. Evidence of something that would have rewritten history. Something your grandfathers buried along with my grandfather because they feared what it would mean for their comfortable understanding of the world. She held out the diary, offering it to Nathan. Read it yourself. See what kind of men your grandfathers really were. Nathan took the diary with trembling hands, the weight of history, his family's history, heavy in his palms. As he began to read Roberto Vasquez's final words written in a flowing script on pages browned with age, the full truth of what lay buried beneath his farm began to reveal itself. A truth that would change everything he thought he knew about his inheritance, his grandfather, and the land that had been in his family for generations. The sins of the past had finally caught up with the present, and there would be no going back to the comfortable ignorance of before. Whatever Roberto had discovered, whatever had gotten him killed, was about to come to light after more than a century in darkness. And Nathan knew with sudden clarity that nothing, not his family name, not his home, not his very understanding of his place in the world, would ever be the same again. Nathan stared at the diary in his hands, the brittle pages threatening to crumble at his touch. Roberto Vasquez's handwriting flowed across the yellowed paper in elegant script, the ink faded but still legible after more than a century. The final entries painted a vivid picture of a man who knew he was in danger, yet pressed forward with his discovery, despite growing suspicions about his partners. He knew they were planning to betray him, Nathan murmured, turning to the last page. But he went to meet them anyway because he believed what he'd found was too important to keep hidden. Elena Vasquez nodded, her weathered face solemn in the dim light of the sealed chamber. My grandfather was an idealist. He believed knowledge belonged to the world, not to individuals who would hoard it for profit. Nathan continued reading, his breath catching, as he reached the description of what Roberto had actually discovered beneath the silver vein. Not just precious metal, but something far more significant, artifacts of ancient origin embedded in the rock itself, predating any known civilization in the region by thousands of years. Detailed drawings accompanied the text, showing symbols and objects unlike anything Nathan had ever seen. This can't be real, he whispered, looking up from the diary. If this is true, it would rewrite history. Exactly why your grandfathers killed him, Elena replied, her voice hardening. They couldn't allow such a discovery to become public knowledge. It would have brought government scientists, historians, archaeologists all swarming over land they wanted to exploit privately for its silver. Victor Cross pushed forward, his face flushed with anger. This is preposterous. Ancient artifacts, hidden civilizations. There's nothing down here but silver and the unfortunate remains of a man who threatened to expose our grandfather's mining operation. Elena's smile held no warmth. Is that what your grandfather told you? That Roberto was killed simply to protect their illegal mining? She turned to Jensen, giving a slight nod. Show them. Jensen disappeared into a side passage of the chamber, returning moments later with a cloth-wrapped bundle. He placed it carefully on a table and unwrapped the layers of protective fabric to reveal what lay inside, a stone tablet, approximately 12 inches square, covered in markings that resembled no known writing system. The material wasn't ordinary stone, but something metallic with a strange iridescent quality that seemed to shift colors in the light. This was found with my grandfather's body, Elena explained. One small piece of what he discovered, which your grandfathers missed in their haste to conceal their crime. For generations, my family has protected studying it, trying to understand what Roberto had found. Nathan approached the tablet cautiously drawn by the unusual markings. As his fingers hovered near the surface, he felt a strange vibration, almost like electricity, but different, warmer, more organic. What is it? We don't know exactly, Elena admitted, but similar artifacts have been found at only 2 other sites in North America, both under circumstances that were quickly suppressed by authorities. Roberto believed he had discovered evidence of a pre-Columbian civilization with a technology far beyond what conventional history acknowledges. Rachel Harrison had been silent until now, observing the exchanges with growing concern. If what you're saying is true, why come after us now? Why not go public with this decades ago? We tried, Elena's voice tightened with old frustration. My grandmother approached universities, museums, even the federal government. No one would listen to a Mexican widow with wild claims in a single artifact. Without access to the rest of what Roberto found, which your grandfather's buried somewhere in this tunnel system, we had insufficient proof. Nathan turned to the final pages of Roberto's diary, searching for clues. Does it say where the main cache of artifacts was hidden? Only that they were secured in a chamber beneath the silver vein? Elena replied. A natural cavity in the rock that Roberto believed had once been a sacred space for the ancient people who created these objects. Victor scoffed, his disbelief evident. Convenient that these supposed artifacts are hidden somewhere we can't easily verify their existence. Elena's gaze hardened. The contract expires in 28 days. When that happens, all of this land legally reverts to shared ownership among our 3 families. My family will finally have the right to search for what was stolen from us, both the silver and the archaeological treasures. Nathan closed Roberto's diary carefully, the weight of his family's crime pressing down on him like the earth above their heads. You don't need to wait for the contract to expire. Not for this. I'll sign over my share of the land today if it helps bring justice for Roberto. Victor lunged forward, grabbing Nathan's arm. Have you lost your mind? This farm has been in your family for generations. You'd throw that away based on some wild story in a fake artifact. Nathan wrenched his arm free. I've read the diary. I've seen his remains. Our grandfathers murdered a man and built their fortune on his grave. There's nothing fake about that bullet hole in his skull. Rachel moved between them, preventing further escalation. We need to think clearly here. All of us. Fighting won't solve anything. She turned to Elena. What exactly do you want beyond access to search for these artifacts? Elena's expression remained resolute. Justice, recognition of Roberto's discovery, return of the silver that was stolen from him, and most importantly, excavation of the artifact chamber so that the world can learn the truth about what lies beneath this land. The chamber fell silent as the 3 families faced the consequences of actions taken a century before any of them were born. Nathan thought of Emma, of the values he wanted to instill in her. Could he truly ask her to inherit wealth built on murder and theft? Would she respect him if he chose family legacy over justice? I need to talk to my daughter, Nathan decided aloud, before I make any decisions that affect her future. Elena studied him with shrewd eyes. Your daughter is sensitive to this place, isn't she? The dreams she's been having, they're not coincidence. Children and families connected to this land often experience awareness of what happened here. Nathan's protective instinct flared. Leave Emma out of this. I wish I could, Elena replied without hostility. But she's already involved whether you want it or not. The connection exists. It always has for all the children in our families. Victor stepped forward, his voice lowered to prevent his sons from overhearing. My granddaughter experienced the same dreams when she was 12. They grew worse as she got older. Eventually, she couldn't separate the dreams from reality. She took her own life at 17. The revelation hung in the chamber like a physical presence. Nathan felt his stomach lurch. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't want to believe it was connected. Victor admitted, his customary arrogance cracking to reveal genuine pain beneath. The dreams, the suicide, I blamed her mental health, not our family's history, until my younger sons started having the same experiences. Nathan turned to Rachel, a question in his eyes. She nodded grimly. My brother's children, too. We thought it was coincidence, genetic predisposition to night terrors. But when I began researching our family history, I found a pattern going back generations. Children in all three families experiencing the same phenomena, always starting around age 12. It ends now. Nathan declared his resolve hardening. Whatever curse or consequence has haunted our families, we're going to fix it. For Emma's sake, and for all the children who've suffered for a crime they didn't commit. Elena nodded her approval. The first step is acknowledging the truth. All of it. No more secrets, no more denials. A commotion from the tunnel entrance interrupted the tense discussion. James and Michael rushed into the chamber, their faces pale with alarm. "Father, we have a problem," James reported breathlessly. "The entrance tunnel has collapsed. The explosives they used earlier weakened the support structure. We're sealed in." Victor cursed under his breath. "What about the back entrance, the cross family passage?" Michael shook his head. "Also blocked. We checked both routes. There's no way out." Panic flickered across the faces of everyone in the chamber as the reality of their situation sank in. Trapped underground with limited supplies, no easy exit, and centuries of hostility between their families. Nathan's thoughts flew immediately to Emma. At least she was safe with Diane away from this nightmare. Elena remained calm, her lifetime of preparation for this moment evident in her steady voice. "There's another way out, through the artifact chamber." All eyes turned to her. Victor voiced what they were all thinking. "You know where it is, the chamber Roberto discovered?" "I've always known," Elena confirmed. "It's directly beneath where we're standing now, accessible through a passage that was sealed after Roberto's murder. My family has maintained detailed maps of the entire tunnel system for generations based on Roberto's original surveys." Nathan studied Elena carefully, suspicion creeping in. "If you've always known, why wait until now to come here?" "Because the passage is flooded," Elena explained. "Has been for decades. We needed specialized equipment to drain it and stabilize the root equipment we couldn't bring in without alerting you to our presence. We were waiting for the contract to expire so we could access the land legally." Rachel frowned. "But the intruders at the house, the explosives, that was your doing." "A necessary diversion," Elena admitted without apology. "We needed to confirm the location of the sealed chamber and Roberto's remains before proceeding with the main excavation. The contract's expiration was taking too long, and my health is failing. I might not have another month." Nathan absorbed this new information, reevaluating everything that had happened since he discovered the tunnel beneath his barn. "So the men at my house were under strict orders not to harm anyone," Elena finished for him. "They were looking for documentation, not confrontation. Your daughter was never in danger." Despite her reassurances, Nathan felt his anger rising. "They invaded my home, terrorized my child, all for some archaeological treasure hunt." "For justice," Elena corrected, steel entering her voice. "For truth, for righting a wrong that has poisoned all our families for generations." Her expression softened slightly. "But yes, I regret the fear it caused your daughter. That was never our intention." The ground beneath them trembled suddenly, a low rumble vibrating through the rock. Dust sifted down from the ceiling as hairline cracks appeared in the chamber walls. "The tunnel system is becoming unstable," Jensen warned, looking up at the widening fissures. "Those explosives did more damage than we anticipated." Elena moved with surprising agility for her age, gathering Roberto's diary and the artifact. "We need to move now. The artifact chamber is our only chance of getting out alive." Victor hesitated, clearly torn between trusting their longtime adversary and certain entombment. Nathan made the decision for all of them. "Show us the way." Elena directed Jensen to move Roberto's coffin aside, revealing a section of flooring that appeared no different from the rest. "Help me with this." Together they lifted a perfectly disguised trap door, exposing a narrow vertical shaft descending into darkness. Metal rungs embedded in the wall formed a ladder leading downward. The bottom was invisible, swallowed by shadows. "The artifact chamber is approximately 30 feet below us," Elena explained. "The passage was intentionally flooded after Roberto's murder to prevent anyone from finding what he discovered." "And now?" Rachel asked, peering dubiously into the darkness. "Now it's mostly drained thanks to pumps my team installed through a separate access point last week. There will still be some water, but the passage should be navigable." Another tremor shook the chamber stronger than before. A support beam cracked ominously, showering them with dirt and small stones. "We don't have time to debate," Nathan decided, moving toward the shaft. "I'll go first. If it's safe, you follow." Before anyone could object, Nathan swung his legs into the opening and began descending the ladder. The metal rungs were slick with moisture, forcing him to grip tightly as he made his way down. The beam of his flashlight revealed the bottom of the shaft about 25 feet below, partially submerged in dark water. When Nathan reached the final rung, he paused, testing the water depth with one muff foot. It came up to his mid-calf, cold but manageable. "It's clear," he called up to the others. "Water's not too deep." One by one, they descended. Elena next, then Rachel, followed by Victor and his sons, with Jensen and Elena's other men bringing up the rear. They gathered at the bottom of the shaft, flashlight beams cutting through the gloom to reveal a narrow passage extending horizontally from the base of the ladder. "This way," Elena directed, moving confidently through the shallow water. The passage twisted and turned, forcing them to proceed in single file. Nathan kept close behind Elena, his flashlight illuminating ancient timber supports that had somehow survived over a century of submersion. The air grew colder as they progressed, with a strange metallic taste that coated the tongue. After several minutes of careful navigation, the passage widened, suddenly opening into a vast natural cavern that took Nathan's breath away. Their combined flashlight beams couldn't reach the far walls or ceiling, giving the impression of entering an underground cathedral. "Roberto's discovery," Elena announced, her voice thick with emotion. "The artifact chamber." As they moved further into the cavern, their lights revealed what had been hidden for generations. The walls were lined with niches carved directly into the rock, each containing objects of unusual design and composition. Stone tablets, similar to the one Elena had shown them, were arranged in what appeared to be a deliberate pattern across the floor of the cavern. At its center stood a raised platform of the same iridescent stone, inscribed with symbols matching those in Roberto's diary. "My God," Rachel whispered, her scientific mind visibly struggling to process what she was seeing. "This is impossible." Victor remained silent, his skepticism finally silenced by the undeniable evidence before them. His sons moved cautiously among the artifacts, careful not to touch anything, their expressions a mixture of awe and disbelief. Nathan approached the central platform, drawn by something he couldn't articulate. The strange vibration he'd felt from the smaller artifact was stronger here, pulsing through the ground beneath his feet like a heartbeat. "What is this place?" Roberto believed it was a temple of sorts, Elena explained, following him. "Created by a civilization that existed here thousands of years before any previously documented presence in North America. A people with knowledge and technology far beyond what conventional history acknowledges. And our grandfathers killed him to keep this hidden." Nathan said, the full weight of their crime finally becoming clear. "Not just for the silver, but to prevent this from becoming public knowledge." Elena nodded grimly. They were men of their time, unable to accept anything that contradicted their worldview, and unwilling to share the fortune they'd discovered in the silver vein above. Nathan circled the platform slowly, noticing a section that appeared designed as an entrance. Steps led up to what looked like a doorway, though no actual door was visible, just an opening into darkness beyond. "Where does this lead?" According to Roberto's notes, it connects to a network of natural caves that eventually reach the surface about a mile from your farm. Elena gestured toward the opening. "That's our way out." A violent tremor suddenly rocked the cavern, stronger than any before. Pieces of the ceiling broke loose, crashing to the floor around them. The artifact chamber, stable for thousands of years, was beginning to collapse. "The explosives damaged the entire tunnel system," Jensen shouted over the rumbling. "We need to move now." They scrambled toward the platform and the exit beyond, splashing through water that was now rising rapidly around their ankles. The pumps had failed, allowing the passage to refill. Nathan reached the steps first, turning to help Elena. Her age finally showed as she struggled against the increasing current. He grabbed her arm, pulling her to safety as water surged into the chamber from the passage they'd used to enter. "Everyone up here!" Nathan shouted to the others, who were still making their way across the increasingly flooded cavern floor. Rachel reached them next, followed by Victor's sons. Jensen and his men were close behind. Only Victor remained near the entrance, stubbornly trying to salvage several smaller artifacts as water swirled around his knees. "Leave them," Nathan called out. "The whole place is coming down." Victor ignored the warning, stuffing a small object into his pocket before finally turning toward the platform. He was halfway there when a massive section of the ceiling gave way, plunging into the water directly in his path. The impact sent a wave surging through the chamber, knocking Victor off his feet and sweeping him against the far wall. James shouted in horror, starting back down the steps toward his father. Nathan grabbed him, holding him back as more debris crashed down where he would have been standing. "You can't help him that way." Michael was already moving along the edge of the platform, searching for another route to reach their father. Victor struggled to his feet, water now at his waist, pinned against the wall by the current and fallen debris. The side passage, Elena pointed to a narrow opening near where Victor was trapped. "It circles back to the platform. Victor, can you reach it?" Victor fought against the rising water, managing to grab a protruding rock for stability. He gauged the distance to the passage Elena had indicated, gathering his strength for the attempt. The entire cavern continued to shake, more sections of the ceiling threatening to collapse at any moment. With a desperate lunge, Victor pushed off from the wall, fighting through the current toward the side passage. He almost made it, his fingers grazing the edge of the opening, before another surge of water pulled him back. He disappeared beneath the surface with a final aborted cry. "Father!" James screamed, fighting against Nathan's restraining grip. Michael plunged into the water without hesitation, diving toward where Victor had vanished. Nathan released James, realizing he couldn't stop both brothers from attempting to save their father. "Be careful, the current's getting stronger." Precious seconds ticked by as the chamber continued to disintegrate around them. Finally, Michael surfaced, dragging Victor's limp form with him. Together with James, who had rushed to help, they fought through the churning water toward the side passage Elena had identified. Nathan waded into the flood up to his chest, extending his arm to help pull them through the final stretch. Victor wasn't breathing, his face pale beneath a gash on his forehead where debris had struck him. "Get him to the platform," Elena directed, already moving toward the exit beyond. "We can help him there." They managed to drag Victor's unconscious body up the steps, just as another massive section of the ceiling collapsed, sealing off the chamber entrance completely. Water continued to rise, now flowing up the steps of the platform toward where they huddled. "Through here," Elena urged, leading the way into the passage beyond the platform. "This rises steadily. We'll stay ahead of the water." The passage was narrow but dry, sloping upward as Elena had promised. James and Michael carried their father between them, his condition worsening with each passing minute. Nathan brought up the rear, watching anxiously as water began seeping into the passage behind them. "How far to the surface?" he asked Elena, who was navigating with the help of an old map she'd produced from an inner pocket. "Less than a mile, but it's not an easy route. Some sections require climbing." She glanced back at Victor's unconscious form. "We'll need to rig some kind of harness for him in." They pressed on through the ancient passage, the sounds of collapse fading behind them as they put distance between themselves and the artifact chamber. After 20 minutes of steady climbing, they reached a vertical shaft similar to the one they descended earlier. Unlike the engineered ladder in the sealed chamber, however, this shaft was natural, with handholds worn into the rock by water over millennia. "This is the hardest part," Elena warned, studying the shaft. "It's about 40 feet to the next level." Victor still hadn't regained consciousness, his breathing shallow and labored. Michael pressed an ear to his father's chest, his expression grim. "His heart's failing. We need to get him to a hospital." "First, we need to get him up this shaft," Nathan pointed out, already removing his belt to fashion part of a makeshift harness. "Everyone belts shoelaces, anything we can use to secure him." Working together, they created a crude but functional system to hoist Victor up the shaft. James climbed first, establishing an anchor point above. Nathan and Michael secured the improvised harness around Victor's chest and under his arms, while Rachel and Jensen prepared to guide his body from below to prevent him from striking the walls. "Ready?" Nathan called up to James, who had reached the top of the shaft and secured himself to a sturdy rock formation. "Ready," James confirmed, beginning to pull on their makeshift rope. The ascent was painstakingly slow, with Victor's unconscious form swinging dangerously whenever it caught on a protrusion in the rock face. Several times the harness slipped, threatening to give way entirely. Nathan climbed alongside, stabilizing Victor whenever possible, his muscles burning with the effort. When they finally hauled Victor over the lip of the shaft onto the next level, everyone was drenched in sweat despite the cool underground temperature. One by one, the rest of the group made the climb, gathering in what appeared to be another natural cavern, smaller than the artifact chamber, but still impressive in size. Michael immediately checked his father's condition again, his face tightening with concern. "He's getting worse. We need to move faster." Just one more major climb after this section, Elena assured them, consulting her map. Then it's a relatively gentle slope to the surface. They fashioned a stretcher for Victor using jackets buttoned together, allowing four of them to carry him through the winding passage that led from the cavern. The road grew steeper, forcing them to navigate carefully to avoid losing their footing on the slick stone floor. After what seemed like hours but was probably less than 45 minutes, they reached the final vertical section Elena had mentioned. Unlike the previous shaft, this one showed signs of modern reinforcement, metal pitons driven into the rock at regular intervals, forming a rudimentary ladder. My team installed these last week, Elena explained, part of our preparation for the excavation. With Victor's condition deteriorating rapidly, they abandoned caution for speed. Using the pitons, they hoisted him up the shaft in a smoother operation than before, benefiting from the properly anchored handholds. Beyond this final obstacle, the passage widened and leveled out, eventually leading to a metal trapdoor set into the ceiling. Jensen climbed up first, pushing it open to reveal night sky scattered with stars. Fresh air rushed in, sweet and clean, after the stale atmosphere of the underground passages. They emerged one by one into a small clearing, surrounded by pine trees far from any road or path. Victor was carried out last, his sons immediately laying him on level ground to assess his condition. "He's not breathing," Michael cried, beginning chest compressions, while James tilted their father's head back to clear his airway. Nathan pulled out his phone, relieved to find a weak signal. He dialed 911, his voice urgent as he explained their situation to the dispatcher. "We need an ambulance. Man in his 60s, possible cardiac arrest, near drowning." He looked to Elena for their exact location. "Hampton Creek Wilderness Area, North Ridge, access point," she supplied, pointing to a small dirt road visible through the trees. "Emergency services know it. It's a designated rescue location." Nathan relayed the information, then joined Rachel in helping Michael and James with their desperate attempts to revive Victor. For 10 long minutes, they took turns performing CPR, watching for any sign of response. By the time they heard distant sirens approaching, all of them knew it was too late. Victor Cross was pronounced dead at the scene by paramedics who had hiked in from the nearest access road. Official cause of death: drowning, complicated by cardiac arrest. His son sat shell-shocked beside his covered body as police began taking statements from everyone present. Nathan pulled Elena aside during the confusion, his voice low and urgent. "What happens now to the artifacts, to Roberto's discovery?" Elena's weathered face showed exhaustion, but also relief, the culmination of a lifelong quest finally within reach. "Now we bring the truth to light. All of it, the murder, the cover-up, and what lies beneath your farm." "And the silver?" Nathan asked, thinking of the crates that likely remained buried forever in the collapsed tunnel system. "It never belonged to any of us," Elena replied simply. "It was Roberto's discovery, stolen by murderers. Whatever can be recovered should go to historical preservation of the site and education about what was found there." Nathan nodded slowly, the path forward becoming clear in his mind. "I need to talk to Emma first. Explain everything. Then I'll sign whatever documents you need to transfer my share of the land." Elena studied him with newfound respect. "Your grandfather would not have done the same." "I'm not my grandfather," Nathan responded, the words feeling like a declaration of independence from a legacy built on deceit. "And I don't want Emma carrying the burden of his crimes." Dawn broke over the wilderness area as emergency vehicles continued to arrive. Police cordoned off the trapdoor entrance, establishing a perimeter around what they had been told was a historical archaeological site, where a tragic accident had occurred during exploration. The full truth would come later, when they were ready to reveal it to the world. Nathan borrowed a police officer's phone to call Diane, needing to hear Emma's voice and confirm she was still safe. When his daughter came on the line, her words surprised him. "I knew something big was happening, Dad. I dreamed about the underground temple last night, about the man who found it and how he died." Nathan closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the connection that seemed to transcend normal understanding. "I'm coming to get you soon, Em. We have a lot to talk about." "Is it over now?" Emma asked, a child's simple question, cutting to the heart of the matter. "The bad thing that happened in the past, is it fixed?" Nathan looked across the clearing to where Elena stood with Jensen, already speaking to someone on the phone about arranging proper archaeological assessment of the site. "We're working on it, kiddo. We're finally working on it." 3 days later, Nathan sat at Diane's kitchen table, signing the last of the documents Elena's lawyers had prepared. The farmhouse and surrounding land would be transferred to a trust established for the preservation and study of the artifact chamber and its contents. A portion of any proceeds from the silver recovery, if any could be safely extracted from the collapsed tunnels, would go to a scholarship fund in Roberto Vasquez's name. Emma watched the proceedings with solemn attention, understanding more than Nathan had initially given her credit for. When he had explained everything, the murder, the cover-up, the artifacts, and the decision to surrender their family farm, she had nodded with the wisdom sometimes found in children who haven't yet learned to rationalize wrong actions. It was never really ours anyway, she had observed. We were just borrowing it from the man who found it first. Now, as Nathan signed the final paper, Emma placed her hand over his. "Mom would be proud of you, Dad." The simple statement nearly broke him. Sarah had always valued honesty above all else, teaching Emma from an early age that there was never a good reason to lie. What would she have thought of the legacy they'd inherited? Of the decision he'd made to give it up? "I hope so." He managed his voice rough with emotion. "I really hope so." Rachel Harrison arrived as they were gathering their belongings, preparing to leave Diane's house for the motel where they had been staying since the events at the farm. Her face showed the strain of the past days, the police interviews, the legal consultations, the beginning stages of what promised to be an archaeological sensation once the news broke. "The university team is arriving tomorrow," she informed Nathan. "Elena has arranged for the proper permits and professional oversight. They're calling it potentially the most significant archaeological find in North America." Nathan nodded relief, mixing with lingering sadness for what had been lost. "And Victor's sons, James and Michael, have signed their portion of the land over to the trust as well," Rachel confirmed. "I think losing their father that way, it changed their perspective on what matters." Emma, who had been quietly listening, looked up at Rachel. "Are your nightmares gone too? The ones about the man under the ground?" Rachel seemed startled by the direct question, but answered honestly, "Yes. For the first time in years, I slept without dreams last night." "Me too," Emma said simply. "He's not angry anymore. He's finally being heard." The three adults exchanged glances, none of them entirely comfortable with the implications of Emma's statement, yet none able to dismiss it either. Whatever connection had existed between the children of the three families and Roberto Vasquez's restless spirit, it seemed to be fading now that justice was finally being served. Elena arrived as they were loading the last of their essentials into Nathan's truck. Despite her age, she moved with renewed energy, her lifelong mission finally nearing completion. "The media will be arriving by tomorrow afternoon," she warned Nathan. "Once the university confirms what they've found, this will become international news. Are you prepared for that?" Nathan glanced at Emma, who was carefully arranging her stuffed rabbit in the truck's back seat. "We'll manage. We're staying at the Pine Ridge Motel for now until we figure out our next steps." Elena hesitated, then pulled an envelope from her pocket. "This is for Emma, from me." Nathan accepted it cautiously. "What is it?" "Deed to a small house on the edge of town. It belonged to my late sister. It's nothing fancy, but it's paid for and in good condition." Elena's expression softened. "Roberto would have wanted his discovery to bring healing, not more hardship. Your daughter shouldn't lose her home because of a crime committed before any of us were born." Nathan stared at the envelope, overwhelmed by the unexpected gesture. "I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's not charity," Elena insisted. "Consider it the first act of the Roberto Vasquez Foundation, ensuring that justice doesn't create new victims." She glanced at Emma. "Besides, I have a feeling that young lady has a role to play in preserving and understanding what her great-grandfather tried to destroy. She has a connection to this place that shouldn't be severed completely." Before Nathan could respond, Emma approached, having overheard the conversation. "Is it near my school? Can I still see my friends?" Elena smiled warmly. "It's 3 blocks from your school and has a yard big enough for a dog, if your father ever decides you're responsible enough for one." Emma's eyes widened at this unexpected detail, turning to Nathan with sudden hope. "Dad, could we—" The simple childhood desire, so normal, so untouched by the weight of historical crimes and supernatural connections, broke through Nathan's resistance. In that moment, he saw a path forward for them both. Not erasure of the past, but acknowledgement and growth beyond it. "We'll see," he promised, which every child knows is parents speak or for probably yes, eventually. He turned back to Elena. "Thank you. This is more than generous." It's necessary, Elena replied simply. Breaking cycles requires more than exposing truth. It requires creating new foundations. 1 month later, Nathan stood at the edge of the excavation site that had once been his barn, watching as university archaeologists carefully documented and removed artifacts from the newly expanded entrance to the tunnel system. The collapse had been contained to specific sections, leaving much of Roberto's discovery intact and accessible through the route they'd used to escape. The media frenzy had been intense, but focused primarily on the archaeological significance rather than the historical crime. Elena had insisted that Roberto's murder be acknowledged in all official accounts, but presented it as a tragic footnote rather than the central story. The discovery is what matters now, she had explained. Let him be remembered for what he found, not just how he died. Umum had adapted to their new home with the resilience of youth, quickly establishing a routine that included regular visits to the excavation site. The archaeologists had taken a liking to her, impressed by her detailed questions and genuine interest in their work. One graduate student had even begun teaching her basic archaeological techniques, allowing her to help sift through soil samples from non-critical areas. Rachel joined Nathan at the observation area, her academic background giving her special appreciation for the meticulous work underway. The university is establishing a permanent research center, she informed him. They're calling it the Vasquez Institute for Pre-Columbian Studies. Elena must be pleased, Nathan observed, spotting the elderly woman across the site deep in conversation with the project director. It's her life's work coming to fruition, Rachel agreed, though she's insisting that your daughter be involved in some capacity as she gets older. Something about maintaining the connection between all three families in a positive way going forward. Nathan watched Emma carefully brushing dirt from what appeared to be a small artifact, her face intent with concentration. I think she'd like that. As the sun began to set over the excavation, casting long shadows across what had once been the Miller family farm, Nathan felt a strange sense of peace settling over him. The land had never truly belonged to his family. It had been stolen like everything else his grandfather had passed down. Yet in losing his inheritance, Nathan had gained something far more valuable, the chance to teach his daughter that doing the right thing mattered more than property or wealth or even family legacy. Emma jogged over to join them, her hands still dusty from her work. Dr. Winters says they have identified some of the symbols from the central platform. They match writing systems found in only 2 other locations in the world. Her excitement was contagious, her eyes bright with the thrill of discovery rather than haunted by dreams of a man buried beneath the ground. This was Roberto's true legacy. Nathan realized not silver or land or wealth, but knowledge. Understanding of a past that had been deliberately buried now finally coming to light. Dad? Emma tugged at his sleeve, pulling him from his thoughts. Are you okay? Nathan looked down at his daughter, seeing Sarah's features in her face, but also something uniquely Emma, a strength and clarity that belonged to her alone. I'm better than okay, he assured her, putting an arm around her shoulders. I'm right where I need to be. As they walked together toward their truck, leaving the excavation behind for the evening, Nathan glanced back one last time at the land that had been in his family for generations. What had once seemed like a burden of legacy now felt like a lesson learned and passed on, that the truth, however long buried, eventually finds its way to the surface. And that a father's most important inheritance to his daughter isn't land or wealth, but the courage to face difficult truths and the integrity to make them right. Emma leaned against him as they walked comfortable in the new life they were building together. The dreams have stopped completely, she observed casually. For everyone. Rachel told me her niece isn't having them anymore either. That's good, Nathan replied, opening the truck door for her. I think Roberto can rest now. His story is finally being told. Emma climbed into the passenger seat, buckling her seatbelt with the unconscious efficiency of habit. Do you think there are other places like this? Other secrets buried under ordinary farms and houses? Nathan started the engine, considering her question. Probably. The world is full of hidden stories waiting to be discovered. He glanced at his daughter, seeing the spark of curiosity that might shape her future path. Maybe you'll be the one to find the next one. Emma smiled at the suggestion, already turning it over in her mind as they drove away from what had once been their home and was now becoming something far more significant, a place where the past could finally speak its truth after centuries of enforced silence. Behind them, lights blazed across the excavation site, as work continued into the evening. The earth, having held its secrets for generations, was finally surrendering them into caring hands. Not for profit or possession, but for understanding exactly as Roberto Vasquez had intended almost 2 centuries before.